Does it mean she's never seen it before? Does she feel bad? How does this get interpreted? Let's bring in our think tank tonight, try to figure it out. Joining us tonight in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, trial attorney, former prosecutor, Leslie Ricard Chambers is back with us. In Okemos, Michigan, trial attorney Jamie White is with us tonight. And in Cincinnati, Ohio, criminal defense attorney and civil attorney Ameer Mabjish is with us. Great to have everyone here. Leslie, let me begin with you and that reaction that we saw, that our camera saw, that the viewers at home saw, and that the jury saw in the courtroom from the defendant in the moments that Ashley Biggs' dead body and her remains are shown up on the big screen.
Yes. So what we can conclude from her reaction was that the photographs it showed the gruesome way that the victim died in this case. And I'm not sure if the person who is sitting in the red chair is a juror or not, but when I saw the defendant's reaction to observing the photograph, I also kind of cued in on the person sitting to the left and back of her, somewhat looking at her, just watching her reaction, watching the defendant's reaction. And so what's key here for me is whether or not these photographs or this photograph was so gruesome that it could have, if the jury saw too many of these types of photographs, do these photographs accurately reflect the crime scene? Yes, but also did the state present too many of these types of photographs to the degree that the probative value of the evidence would be outweighed by the prejudicial effect of the gruesomeness of these photos? And so, the defendant, she seems to have seen this for the first time. I mean, that's at least how she is reacting. And she does seem to be disturbed, but, we don't know what that reaction means. We don't know how much weight to really give it. What we can glean, though, is that the photograph is likely so gruesome that it was hard for her to even stare at.
Yeah, I just want to make clear the woman there is not a juror. Court TV, we do not show the jurors on television.
Right.
We never record them. I'm not exactly sure what that person is doing there, but I'll try to find out. Jamie White, that reaction, it was real. Later on in the day, when more photos were put up by the medical examiner, she's not having that same reaction anymore. But that's the first time that Ashley Biggs' image is put up on that screen in the state that she was in at the scene. What do you think the jury takes from that reaction?
So I agree with Leslie. I think her explanation of the legal standard is point on. We have rules in place to prevent the jury from seeing unnecessary graphic photos such of this nature. And I think, my bigger concern, Vinny, is, why is the defense not jumping up and down and trying to do something?
But the jury's got to see it, right? I mean, we're trying to figure out who did that. The jury should see it.
They see some of it, Vinny. I know you're an old prosecutor, but look, you as a defense attorney,
it's the truth. It's what happened.
You get one picture, you get one video, maybe two. You don't get to spoil it over and over again. And this is just one concern I have with this particular defense team, Vinny. We heard evidence over the last 48 hours of extraordinary prior bad acts. Acts that, in my opinion, were not remotely relevant, but if they were relevant, they went far beyond the standard that's been articulated by Leslie, in that if stepmom did, in fact, commit any of the abuses that have been alleged, they should have never been allowed into court. And if they were allowed into court, they should have at least been disputed by the defense, which, from my watching, that did not take place. And, again, we have not seen any sort of defense arguments or attempts to rebut some of the forensic evidence. I guess we'll find out tomorrow. but we have, evidence that's been put forth or at least alleged that has not been supported by anything forensically. And I can tell you, if everything boils down to a phone call in this case, and I know that's not the question you asked, Vinny, but if everything boils down to a phone call in this case,
Oh, we're going to get to that. Don't worry. We're getting to that. Next segment, we'll be all over that phone call.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. I guess I would just summarize by saying I agree with Leslie. And, whether they saw one picture or 5 pictures, I think the defense, she deserves better in regards to pushing back on some of the evidence we've seen today, including some of the photographs that you've suggested are a problem.
All right, Ameer, what is the ultimate impact of all of this? And what do you think it really means, her reaction when she does it? Is that a sign of innocence? Is that a sign of guilt? What is that?
I agree that her reaction seemed genuine. So I think it was a good thing. You're not allowed to ask jurors to put themselves in the place of your client or another witness. And at that point in time, they see something so inflammatory, and she reacted appropriately. So that's exactly what you want your client to do. I also agree it is inflammatory, so you want to limit it. But at the same time, she did. She reacted genuinely. It appeared. But we have masks on. This is where COVID comes into play. Should we even be having trials right now where everybody's masks are covering their faces? I mean, you can see half her face, but it did seem genuine. I think it was a good reaction, but it's a small point at the end of the day because the evidence is what is going to weigh more heavily, not just her reaction.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of evidence. Let's talk about the backpack that was found in the backyard that she shared with the admitted murderer, who then on the stand said he didn't commit the murder after he pleaded guilty back in 2013. There was a backpack, and we've got a list of what was in that backpack. This is like, if you're going to commit a murder 101, this would be the checklist, right? First, you got to get duct tape. You got to have the duct tape, another piece of duct tape, a phaser cartridge, which is some sort of a taser, camouflage face paint. You've got the black gloves and a face mask. And then, of course, the duct tape that was found matches the duct tape that was on his clothes and duct tape that was at the scene. So they were able to put all of that together, Jamie. Does that do anything to implicate her versus Chad Cobb, her husband, who pleaded guilty to the murder?
So the prosecuting attorney is going to try to create a scenario where this ties her to the evidence in some way, shape, or form because she lived there. But if you look at the majority of that evidence, taking away the phaser cartridge, I suppose, any of those items are found in any of our homes on any given day, well, whether it's the garage.
I'm not going to your house. I'll tell you that. If you got a backpack full of that, I'm staying. Don't even invite me to dinner because I won't go.
Hey, fair enough. I'm in Michigan. We've had some stuff going on up here. But Vinny, certainly this is the problem with their case. Their case is not based on evidence tying her to committing the act. There is no confession committing her to the act. There is your traditional evidence that gets somebody to a murder conviction isn't here. So now we're in a position where we're saying we found duct tape in your home or near your home where your ex-husband already confessed to the killing. I mean, so I guess taking it one step further, and again, I'm not suggesting there isn't evidence against this young woman, but at the end of the day, if we're getting to the point where we have convicted killers who pled guilty, weren't convicted by a trial, pled guilty, found in a tree line full of blood of his ex-wife, and ultimately confessed to the crime. If that implicates a woman who happened to live with him at the time and, admittedly was with the other children trying to figure out what was going on after the fact, I think that's a bridge too far. That's all they have to work with in this case, other than a 12-year-old young woman who was given some pretty incredible testimony of her own. But I'm not impressed by duct tape found at a house. And I hope nobody looking at me down the road would be impressed by that either.
Leslie, I've got an answer to your question. The woman who we see in the video sort of behind the defendant is part of the special COVID cleaning crew that works that courtroom. So whenever someone gets up from the witness stand or wherever, she's part of the crew that goes in and cleans everything up. So that's who they are. And it's an extra person that we don't normally have in a courtroom, right? But now we do.
Right.
Bottom line here, Ameer, how much does the duct tape and all the stuff that's found at her house implicate her versus the ex, Chad Cobb?
I mean, at the end of the day, they're just trying to establish complicity. I mean, they're trying to establish her participation, her aiding and abetting. So they have to show that there were things associated with him that were close to her that she may have had knowledge of or may have known about or was involved in some way. I mean, I obviously don't think that she's going to be found guilty of aggravated murder, but they're going to harp a lot on him and what he's done in order to tie them together. I mean, they're a couple. So they believe that she was aiding and abetting, and what was in her home, they need to show that those items were used in the murder.
Now, when we come back, the key piece of evidence, the most important thing. Jamie already mentioned it. He's all over it, right? He's getting ready. He's chomping at the bit. The phone call. Who made the phone call to Domino's to lure Ashley Biggs to her death? Was it Erica Stefanko? We're going to walk through all the pieces of evidence that prosecutors have put out there to try to prove that point. That's next.
The last call, they ordered one pizza.
Who are
And
they?
yes,
Who are they? Male or female?
oh, it was a female caller.
Okay. Were you familiar with the female or the number that called?
No, it popped up as a new customer in our database.
And do you remember what time that call, or approximately the time that call came in?
About 15, 20 minutes before closing.
Okay, so around 11:42, 11:45, somewhere around that time?
Somewhere around that area, yes.
That was the phone call that lured Ashley Biggs, who was working for Domino's as a delivery person, lured her to her death. And you heard from the manager, it was from a number that had never called that Domino's before, and it was a female voice. One of the pieces of evidence prosecutors putting forth trying to prove that Erica Stefanko was the one who made that phone call. Also, another piece of evidence came from Chad Cobb, her now former husband, who admitted to the murder and then, said he didn't do it yesterday, but that's another story for another day. Let's listen to his testimony about who made the phone call.
And did you have a conversation under that tree?
Yes, I did.
After that conversation, did you stay there at the tree with Erica, or
Yes.
did one of you leave the tree?
Erica left and walked back over to the Lincoln.
All right. So when she walked over to the Lincoln, what did she do?
She made a phone call.
And could you hear that phone call?
I could hear bits and pieces, but not the entire thing.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Mr. Cobb, on this occasion, you're going to be allowed to answer this following question. What did you hear Erica say on that phone call? Objection.
Overruled.
I remember her saying somebody else's name. I remember it was a Jennifer or Katie, and it was Mick something. Like how you say McDonald's, I don't remember what she said the last name was. And I remember she ordered a pizza. And I remember it struck me as bizarre because she ordered a half pepperoni and mushroom pizza.
Okay, let's bring back in the think tank. Leslie Ricard Chambers. Is this enough evidence to prove that Stefanko made the call? Want to clarify, the pizza was not half pepperoni and mushroom. It was just pepperoni, number one, so he got that wrong. But the name of the person who made the order was Jen, and that was one of the two names that he said. So is that going to be enough?
I don't think so at all. And I do think that the pepperoni, mushroom, I'm so sure that it was he's making this exclamation as if he was so sure that she ordered the pizza a certain way with pepperoni and with mushrooms. And we're making light of that now. But we know that the manager of the Domino's testified that that was not the order that was placed. The order that was placed was for a pepperoni pizza. And so, Chad's credibility is on the line here, not just in this particular line of questioning, but the very basis for which Erica is being charged with this homicide now, or at least being affiliated with this homicide, is because Chad is now saying that she participated or she had something to do with this, and he's hoping that his statement that she was the one that made the phone call and thus luring the victim to the location of leading up to her death. He's hoping that it holds some weight. But again, while we're making light of the pepperoni and mushroom pizza order, it does, because he's so sure, he's coming across as being so sure about her ordering it that way so long ago, it does sort of make him seem less credible.
Okay, you're not convinced. You're not convinced yet. All right, let me put out another piece of evidence here. This is GC, who is Ashley Biggs' daughter, who's now 15, testifying. She was 6 or 7 at the time that all this happened. She was there that night. Here's what she remembers.
Do you have a memory of Erica making a phone call?
Yes.
Tell us about the phone call.
I can remember her, and I remember hearing it but not seeing it. And I know she ordered a pizza. I don't remember what she said that was on it. And I can remember that she did not use her name.
All right, Ameer, is that going to be enough? Now, I've given you GC, Chad Cobb, and the manager from Domino's.
I mean, look, I'm a defense attorney through and through. I mean, that's what I went to law school to be. So I want to believe that, no, it's not. But I'm also not foolish enough to think that a jury can't reasonably infer that who else could it be? There's been no other explanation offered. And I feel like there needs to be some alternative offered. You can't just expect them to think that it's some random person that there's been no explanation about. She is his wife. There's too many ties between them. So I think that on the one hand, yeah, they probably are going to think she made the call. But on the other hand, what's lacking is the intent and the agreement or discussion behind that as to what that call meant. She may have made the call. She may have set it up, but that doesn't mean that she knew or had the intent or knowledge of what he was going to do after that call was made and once a meeting occurred.
All right, small victory for me. I give it like half a point, so I got like half a point out of 3 right now. Let's get to the next piece of evidence. This is Mary Brinkman, formerly a really good friend of Erica Stefanko, had a conversation with her and is telling the jury all about it.
We had started talking about things that were going on, and she had told us that she wouldn't admit or say that she had made the phone call to make the pizza delivery order, but she said she knew who did, and she wouldn't tell us why, because she said that she didn't want to drag us into it. And at the time, I had just thought, maybe she didn't want us to have to testify against Chad, since we were friends with him. So I didn't really think anything of it. But she had said that there was a lot of evidence that the police had missed when they went through the house. She never said what the evidence was. She also said that something about the computer, that there was a lot of evidence on the computer that I don't know why they didn't take that, but she had said that.
And this was during the dinner conversation?
Yes.
All right, Jamie, that's the best friend. She said she knew who made the phone call. Is that going to be enough?
Well, again, I just don't think so if we're dealing with the issue of reasonable doubt, Vinny.
We're dealing with who
Look.
made the phone call. I'm going to start there. I just want to establish the phone call first. Did I prove to you who made the phone call?
You absolutely did not. I think we're never going to know who made the phone call. I mean, because look, here we have, let's start backwards. We'll deal with Mary. Mary says there was some conversation that maybe the defendant knew who made the phone call. Does that prove
Not maybe.
that
She said she knew. She knew. Not maybe I know who. I know who made the phone call.
Well, that doesn't mean that she made it, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that she didn't learn it after the fact. I mean, if we're going
It
to
was a woman, though, right? It was a woman.
Well, we had that conversation in the first segment, Vinny. You know, what I would suggest to you is that you, your viewers can go online right now, download an app, change gender voices, and make a phone call and order a pizza, and it's going to sound like a woman if it's a man, or, you know, and so on and so on. And there's lots of reasons people do that, for pranks, for crimes, and unfortunately, maybe in this situation otherwise. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just suggesting, because they're saying it's a woman, because he was married to a woman, that he now accuses multiple years after the fact that he made no allegations against her. He made these allegations only after she began to have a relationship.
All right, I've
with
got
his
one more
friend.
piece. Jamie, I'm going to give you one more piece, and everyone will get a vote on this one, okay? This is now Cindy Cobb, Chad's mother. This is 2014. Chad is already behind bars. He's admitted to it. And now Cindy has a conversation with Erica, but Cindy secretly records it. Let's take a listen.
You told me face to face that you made the phone call and you set the meeting up. I mean, that's what you had told me.
And there's no lie in that. Like I said, Chad said this is what we're going to do, and this is your part in it, and I carried out my part in it, and I did exactly what he told me to do. And it wasn't because he was forcing me to do it, or like he had a gun to my head. It was because he said this is your part, and this is what you're going to do.
All right, she's confronted by her ex-mother-in-law saying, you told me that you made the phone call. She does not deny it. And then she says, I did exactly what Chad told me to do.
I think
you each have 15 seconds to either accept that she made the phone call or tell me why she didn't. Go ahead, Leslie. Ladies first.
I believe more now that it's highly likely that she made that phone call. But only after that recording.
All right, highly likely. Go ahead, Jamie.
You know, I think that's evidence against her. No getting around it. I think there's different reasons people react when being presented with leading questions of that nature, post-homicide and so on, like get my mother-in-law, get my friends off the phone. But that is troubling evidence. There's no getting around it.
All right, Ameer.
I think you know what I think already. But that doesn't mean that she's guilty. It
Okay.
doesn't mean she's guilty of complicity to murder. But yeah, I mean, I think it is reasonably inferred that she made the phone call. She needs to get up there and tell us who that is then, if it wasn't her.
All right. Highly likely, troubling, reasonably inferred. Victory. All right. Halfway there. All right. When we come back, we've got more to talk about. But I want to let you know about the latest episode of the Court TV podcast. It is available right now. This week, my colleague Michael Ayala joins me to discuss the most recent court appearances of these two guys, Greg and Travis McMichael, the father and son duo accused of taking the law into their own hands and killing 25-year-old jogger Ahmaud Arbery. Here's a preview. Then they put on the witness stand Zach Langford as a character witness for Travis McMichael. And this guy's like his best friend. As this was happening in the courtroom, I was like, this is not good for the defendant. You're calling someone to vouch for you, and it really appears that he is not telling the truth, and it seems very obvious.
I don't think the kid was being as disingenuous as everyone initially thought. I've looked at it a number of times, Vinny, and that's the conclusion I came to. But you cannot escape what that was, and I said this on the air, that those types of stereotypes, Vinny, are what creates the type of desensitization that allows shootings like this to happen.
All right. Michael Ayala, even when he agrees with me, he doesn't agree with me. It's amazing. All right. The Court TV podcast is available wherever you listen, and you can always find it right here on CourtTV.com. We'll be right back. On the docket tonight, a tragic case out of Denver, Colorado, where a young couple was walking their dog. And apparently, or allegedly, the dog relieved himself like in a rock garden near some apartment complex. And this resulted in an argument with someone who maybe lives in that apartment. And the young woman and the young man are then shot at. Like 24 shots ring out from I think it's an AR-15. She gets killed. He survives. It's a real tragic case. Julie Grant has more for us tonight.
Isabella Thallis turned 21 on June 8th. She planned to celebrate later in the week with her dad.
I didn't get an opportunity to celebrate her birthday with her. You know, I still had her birthday gift. So I didn't get a chance to hug her and give her a kiss and give her her gift. You know, at 21, they're busy, they got things going, and I said, hey, no big deal, we'll catch up on the weekend.
On June 10th, Thallis and her boyfriend went on a walk with her dog, but that walk turned deadly.
I actually got a phone call from my youngest daughter, and she called and said, Dad, Bella's been shot. And at the time, I was in shock. I was just getting home from work. It was about 1 or so in the afternoon. And I said, what does that mean? And she says, well, the news just came out that one person's been shot and one is in surgery and one did not survive.
Thallis's boyfriend, Darian Simon, was seriously injured with a shattered femur, but survived to tell his girlfriend's father about the shooting.
He says, I feel like the bullets just wouldn't stop. He was guessing 30 rounds or more.
Denver police say the suspected shooter, Michael Close, was angry the couple's dog defecated near his ground floor apartment.
At that point, Darian said, he said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. He said, the dog's a service dog. It's trained to go to the bathroom. It's a trained animal.
Simon cleaned up after the dog.
At that time, when he was picking up the poop, he turned around and looked back at the window. And he said the man was crouching down.
That's when the gunfire erupted and Thallis was shot to death. Her father says she lived her life trying to make the world a better place. Joshua Thallis says his daughter's kindness touched complete strangers. One of them shared this story with him at her vigil.
She would make a point to stop and come over and say hello to me every time she saw me. He says, I'm a nobody. I'm a weed puller here with the bus company. He says, I'm just a groundskeeper. I'm a nobody. And it just really filled my heart with light and love that's truly a human being she was. Just didn't matter if you were the CEO or the weed picker, that she treated everybody with just so much kindness and love.
Her dad says she encouraged people to do their very best.
Bella always challenged our family to be a better human being than the one you were the day before. So we really promoted that and lived by that.
Thallis worked with her boyfriend at the company he co-founded called Be a Good Person.
They strived within their four walls and as human beings to really promote exactly what the clothing line says, was to be a good person.
The family is raising money through GoFundMe to build a dog park where Thallis was killed. They want to carry on her legacy of bringing people together and also create something positive that comes out of their heartbreaking loss.
And her sister says, well, Dad, that's not okay. She wasn't doing anything wrong. Maybe there should be a place where the people and the dogs can go to have a place.
Meanwhile, there's a place where Thallis's memory lives on, a mural painted by artists in her community. As for Michael Close, he faces first-degree murder and other charges relating to the use of a high-capacity ammunition magazine. While family members wait for justice to take its course, they struggle to make sense of their loss.
I believe sometimes the Lord picks the most beautiful flowers first, and this, like I said, this one was really hard. Really hard because there was truly no reasoning behind it. That's the hardest piece.
And we wanted to thank and send our condolences to Isabella's father there. I mean, it's tough, but the picture he paints of his daughter, amazing. We cover a lot of cases here on Court TV, a lot of murders. None of them make any sense. But let me bring back in the think tank because you all have experienced so much in our system. It's hard to explain human behavior that would, like this was completely senseless, Ameer. I don't know where this comes from, how this could even happen. I mean, from your experience, I mean, how common is it that we come across crimes that really make no sense whatsoever?
I mean, it actually is very common, but it's not that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense unless you know a person, know their history, know where they came from, know what led to it. And a lot of times it is a mental health issue of, people want to talk gun bans and regulation, and that's really not exactly the issue. The issue is probably more mental health. I can't imagine that there isn't some mental health issue behind this.
Yeah, I think you're right. Jamie,
or drugs.
Or drugs. Jamie,
or both.
Yeah. These ones, they don't make sense. It was over enough. They were actually cleaning it up as well. It wasn't like, I've covered cases where people were purposely doing this to a neighbor to bother them. That wasn't even close to what was happening here, Jamie.
Right. Vinny, I think it's time we start looking with fresh eyes at some of these issues. And, I'm going to push back a little bit with you and Ameer as far as, maybe some of these speculative issues that are out there. We can guess about whether or not there were drugs and whether or not there was mental health involved. But what we know for a fact is that this man had a semi-automatic machine gun, a weapon that I'm familiar with being prior military, that's really for one thing and one thing only, and that is killing people. And, so I just hope that we can look at this through fresh eyes and get back to the old days of long live and be prosperous, because when we start saying we're going to look the other way at the gun, even though it's an extremely dangerous gun, even though the gun was not even remotely required for this situation or any situation in a community for that matter, I think we lose track of what's important. With that said, I think we're all in agreement. This is a heartbreaking story, and this man's going to prison. And I hope that whether it's policy wise or whether it's policy making or judges making decisions from a punitive point of view, I hope that we can start taking some stock of what's important in our communities.
Leslie, your thoughts on this one?
This case makes me think back to my days as a prosecutor when I had to go out on crime scenes, homicides involving just in different areas of our city. And some of them were easier to conclude, what happened. Maybe there was a war between drug dealers or something else that you could easily draw the lines. Here, what we have is clearly someone who was so enraged, even after this couple cleaned up after their dog, who did what dogs do. That wasn't enough, and his mind was already made up that he was going to kill these beautiful people. And unfortunately, the young lady who died, my heart really aches for her family. My heart aches for this community, and this is one that just does not make sense. I'm glad to see that she spread so much good energy into the world and was spreading good messaging. And I hope that for people who are watching this segment right now, hopefully they're motivated to be as good of a person and to do as much good as she seems to have done in her lifetime.
Absolutely, well stated. We're continuing to track this one. We've got an arraignment that is scheduled for January 4th, 2021. All right, when we come back, guess what? Lori Loughlin's husband, the designer, Massimo Giannulli, reported to federal prison today, but he did a little bit of a Breaking Bad makeover. We posted it. You reacted. 13th juror when we come back. All right, today was the day for Massimo Giannulli. Who is he? He's the millionaire. Like, this guy's like really rich. He's a designer, married to Lori Loughlin, Aunt Becky. Both of them were caught up in the whole college admissions scandal, and as a result, he's got to go to prison. However, he did some sort of like a Breaking Bad makeover before he went to prison. This is from page 6. They've got the photo of him there on the right. That's his new look. Come on. He looks like he's getting ready to break bad inside the big house. There he is on the left. Looks like a model, right? Although he's a designer. And on the right, I mean, he looks a little mean. So, posted that today on social media. Get your reaction as a 13th juror. Will this help him behind bars as he serves his 5-month sentence? We begin our 13th juror comment of the day, which comes to us from Zanel. Zanel writes, it doesn't hurt to fit in. When you stick out like a sore thumb, you might attract unwanted attention. Jamie White, let me ask you, do you think this is going to help Massimo behind bars?
I don't think it's going to hurt him. And I don't know if it has so much to do with him trying to fit in. This guy's super well connected. I can kind of relate to not wanting to have hair duties while you're away for a little while. But I think this has more to do with his PR people, Vinny. We saw what happened to Martha Stewart when she went to prison. They're through the fences. They're judging her clothes. They're judging the way she's behaving. And at the end of the day, I think this gentleman probably is just taking away all of that conversation and saying, I'm going to go do my time and leave me alone.
All right, Shelby writes, it does make him look different. He's hoping they won't know who he is, but I doubt if they will care. I'm sure he has a surprise coming. Ameer, as criminal defense attorneys, I guess sometimes you guys go to the jails to talk to clients and stuff. Do you think he'll kind of fit in now with his new look?
No, he can't. His look has nothing to do with fitting in. He is who he is. He can't change who he is. The look is not going to do it. What that look is fear.
No, how about some tats? You get a few tattoos. Hey, Tony tonight writing, if he did this to fly under the radar, I'm sure it'll be the worst kept secret behind bars. I hope he has a few acting tips from his better half. Leslie, this is going to be a tough 5 months. I mean, you go from having, I don't know if he's a billionaire or he may be a billionaire, maybe a little less than a billionaire, I'm not quite sure. But going from that to federal prison for 5 months, big change.
I mean, of course, it's a big change in that context. I personally believe that he cut his hair because he didn't want to deal with the maintenance or the lack thereof, the lack of access to hair maintenance in a federal prison. And so the rational thing to do is to just shave it all off. Look, these people are full of themselves. So I can't put it past him that this wasn't done for some vain purpose. I don't know if he doesn't want people to recognize him. I don't know if anyone really cares in prison. I mean, once you're locked up, one inmate in a federal prison anyway. Auntie Becky did her time, or she's, I guess, about to wrap up doing her time. And so, one star has already gone to prison. Who cares?
Well, she may be home for Christmas.
Clippers in prison. They have clippers in prison. Get a haircut.
Final comment from Lisa Berry tonight. Massimo Giannulli, Breaking Bad makeover, probably isn't so much to keep other inmates off his back, but probably to surprise his wife, Lori Loughlin, when she comes to visit him at the big house once she's released. All right. Great job tonight. Leslie Ricard Chambers, Jamie White, Ameer Mabjish, great to have all of you on the program. Please come back soon. We appreciate your time and your expertise.